If you're here for the Prime Pedagogy Certificate Series, you are once again in the right place. See a lot of familiar names. Welcome back. Welcome, everyone. We'll be going through a 90-minute webinar on strengthening emotional intelligence in business students. So hopefully you're in the right place. I see a lot of familiar names. Yeah, feel free to welcome. Let everybody know where you're coming from. Say hello. Great to see you all. Nadine, as always. Hi, Stefan. Deanna, hello. Great. And many of you may have caught a pre-test link in the lobby when you're coming into Zoom. We'll give you that link in a little bit as well. Thank you, Kudzanai. We'll get started in a few minutes as people roll in. Again, just a reminder, if you're here for strengthening emotional intelligence in business students as part of the Prime Pedagogy Certificate Series, you are in the right place. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Agaswari, Rena, welcome. Hey, Alejandro. Yep, so I put a link to a pretest. It'll just take a minute or two. Um, shouldn't take too long, but we are going to start off with some activities. I'll run through the map of today in a little bit. So we'll get ready in just another minute or two. Thanks for joining, everyone. Yeah, I'll share that link again. And then we'd love it if you could, at the bottom of your Zoom window, should be a react button with a little heart shape, depending on how up to date everyone is. But if you could click on a thumbs up when you get done with the pretest, that'd be really helpful too, just so we get a sense. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Maria. All right. Looks like we're getting ready to roll here. Okay. So I gave you the link to the pretest. I'm just going to walk you through today's journey and then introduce my colleagues as we jump into, again, uh, rethinking or strengthening emotional intelligence in business students. So today's journey, we're going to have an arrival and grounding with the lovely Lamise Sabra, who's part of the Winded Vertigo team. And after that, we will revisit the SJT as a pretest. Many of you may not get through it before then. Please, if you don't mind, if you're not done with it when we start our arrival and grounding activity, just pause that for a moment. We'll give you some time again. And then we'll jump into YEI. You're going to see that we're going to be looking at a couple different frameworks, like CASTLE as a framework for emotional intelligence. But you'll see we'll be asking you to question that. And it's not just about whether it's good for business, but how is it good for the people and the responsible management education side of it. We'll then move into your development of your own SJT, which is a reflection on how to build measures and understanding of your students that are these experiences that are authentic. We'll then move into an individual emotional intelligence check, which should be a fun little, literally like a temperature check. Okay, figuratively, not literally. And then we'll go in and design some playful EI or emotional intelligence. Maria's designed some lovely technology for this, which should be pretty fun. And then we'll have a walkthrough we'll go through some more experiences as we think about emotional intelligence. We'll do our post test, and then we'll do a closing and next steps. All the while, kind of balancing how we have some theories that are kind of prominent theories, but questioning those theories as we move forward, because we don't want to tell you what to think. We want to have a conversation with you all. So, without further ado, my name is Garrett Yeager, Director of Winded Vertigo, working with Prime. My colleague Maria Altamirano is also on here as well. You are all probably very familiar. And then let me introduce you to Lami Sabra, who is going to take you through a little bit of a grounding activity to begin with the power of noticing. Lamis, have fun.
Thanks, Garrett. Hi, everyone. My name is Lemise, and I'm talking to you today from Cairo, a very sunny Cairo. We wanted to, I think, as we were exploring the idea of emotional intelligence, it really felt like self-awareness is the starting point. So we wanted to start this session with sort of asking ourselves a bit of questions around our connection with our body and how we can deepen that. So I wanted to talk about this idea of noticing and my personal journey of sort of creating a bit of space in my body to be able to hold tensions, to be able to have conversations with different people, to be able to, when facing complexity, to be able to, before reacting, have a bit of a pause and to think about what I want to think and to have the space to do that. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that for me, noticing is a little bit about how do you actually create a space where you go from self-awareness to then systems awareness. And that I think links directly to the prime pedagogy and the prime skills and the holistic framework that you've been introduced to over the past few months. But I think what we wanted to focus on for that first part of this session is that sort of inner transformation that I think is really necessary before then going to your students, your organization, your institution, and then sort of the wider systems change that we want to see or that we want to experience or that we want to reimagine. So one of the things that has been very helpful for me was actually creating a breathwork like practice, a daily practice that I do. And I think what I wanted to say is everyone will have a different practice that looks different. And there's so many different tools and strategies you can use to create that inner space to be able to do this. But I wanted to kind of share with you what worked for me. And I think having a breathworks practice, which was sort of just being more aware of my breath, has really created the opportunity to, if we go to the next slide, like create a bit of, first of all, presence, a bit of space, and a bit of ability to kind of be more in touch with my integrity. As Garrett mentioned, we'll be introducing you later on in the session to different frameworks that explore emotional intelligence. And one of them is the inner development goal, which I think maps really well to the prime skills and the prime pedagogy. There's a lot of overlap, but I think in particular that first part around being is really how we can use kind of our presence as an anchor point to start that self-awareness process. So what I wanted to do, so you'll see that being like it includes your inner compass, your integrity and your authenticity, also your openness to learning, but also your openness to other ideas. And that's, I think, the thing that you're confronted with a lot, whether it's with your students, is that a lot of the time people think very differently to us. And so how can we create a space internally to really be able to pause and not react straight away, but really create that space to be open to new ideas, to be curious, and to be almost willing to explore the way that others think and feel by being more in touch with your own thoughts, your own feelings, and creating a space for that. So, if you don't mind, I would love to just go through a very short guided breathwork meditation together. Um, and this is something that has really is something that literally can take 5 minutes. And I think I'm a big fan of things that you can do in really short spaces of time that can really shift your feelings and shift how you're feeling in your body. So if you all don't mind, I would love for you to just sit comfortably. Maybe relax your spine, soften your shoulders, And if it's okay with you, I'd love for you to close your eyes. And what I want you to do is just to notice your breath. So you don't need to change it. You don't need to do anything. Just think about how it feels to be sitting down, how it feels for your body to be touching the chair, what your breath is feeling like. Where is your breath at the moment? Do you feel it in your nose? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your belly? And just to observe that rhythm of your breath, the very natural rhythm of your breath. Now I want us to start to explore deepening our breath together. So we'll take an inhale through our nose and we'll exhale softly through our mouth. We'll do that for 5 times together. So we'll inhale. And now, with your eyes closed, I want you to think of a recent moment where you felt an intense emotion. It could have been a frustration because someone was late to a class. It could be confusion because someone said something really out of your comfort zone. It could be because you felt excluded or you felt angry. Think of how it felt in your body to have that emotion. And just notice if your breathing has changed now. And don't try to fix it or judge that feeling. Just notice, how does it feel to have these emotions? And once you become aware of that, think about now intentionally creating the space to not judge that feeling, to really just accept that it's a feeling and try to create a bit of clarity and go back to your intentions and your values. So let's take one sort of clarity breath together, a deep breath together. So we'll inhale and exhale. So if you don't mind, I would love for you in the chat just to maybe put in either something that you felt. It could be that breath work is very out of your comfort zone. It could be a feeling that you had. Or I would love to hear if there's a way that you actually create space in your day. It could be that you go for a quick walk around the block, that when you're frustrated, you make a cup of tea. How do you actually, when you're thinking about your body and creating the space in your body, how do you actually create that space? And Maria, if you don't mind, we can go to the next slide and I can share a few things. I think a big part of what the Prime team and Winded Vertigo are trying to do through these webinars is really sort of support you in imagining new ways of being and new ways of doing, and thinking about these sort of regenerative alternatives. And really, to be able to do that, we need to be in this space where we're present, where we're open to possibilities, and where we're able to really sort of have and cultivate an inner awareness. And so for me, I would love for you to explore throughout the session, but also afterwards, how can you have this really simple way of creating that space? Thank you so much for all the comments. And maybe Maria, the last slide, and then I'll pass it back to you at the next one. Um, Yeah, so I think that's sort of my reflection is how can we actually use breath, which feels, it's something that we constantly do. It's something that's really accessible. We all do it all the time, but maybe not consciously. How can we be increasing that capacity for presence, for perspective taking, for balancing our emotion, using this, a couple of minutes to really change it. But also, I'm conscious that we all have very cultural differences around how we see the breath. And so it might be something else that you want to do. Yes, I love seeing, for me as well, a short walk is really powerful. Actually, even going to make a cup of tea and breathing while I'm doing that, it's almost like it breaks that pattern of whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, and creating new ways of thinking about things about this. So thank you so much for humoring me, and I'll pass back to Garrett and Maria.
Wow, thank you. Again, I think this is another way that we like to show the way that we're thinking and the way that we view these ideas rather than just talking about them. Um, again, thank you, Lamis. That was wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining. I know that's not common in every culture or home, but I hope you appreciated that time to breathe. Again, here's our pre-test. Here's a quick QR code. I'm going to get into a couple slides here in a moment, but please scan that with your phone if you like. Otherwise, we do have a link pretest in the Zoom chat as well. We do this just to gather evidence while we're working on things. So give me some thumbs up in Zoom if you are done, or if you need anything else, feel free to mention it in the chat throughout. So thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next session where we kind of give a summary on emotional intelligence, a lit review, if you will, or a quick fly-in. Um, so why EI or why emotional intelligence? So we're going to talk about a few different frameworks. We're mostly going to focus on Castle, but I think it's important for us to think about emotional intelligence from not just the business case, but also from the RME or the responsible management education case. So if we look at the slides here, we have a relationship between the two where EI shapes both results and responsibility. I think that's a beautiful way to think about the way that we move through the world. So starting off, we have EI drives two of the three key skills for effective performance. So it's a foundation for caring, but also for ethical decision making. So it's not just about a business, but it's also about responsible management. We see that in the literature and the research, there's high EI managers, people who are really high in emotional intelligence. They are more likely to attain better outcomes and engagement. Now, this links compassion. So we can talk about how there's a chain here. And let me just sidestep the slides for a minute and talk about how students with higher education or higher emotional intelligence tend to develop more compassionate attitudes towards their peers, understanding and thinking about their perspectives, which also introduces a variety of different perspectives. And then that compassion then strengthens their engagement with each other, their vulnerability and their trust with each other. And that enhanced engagement improves their outcomes. It includes sustainability outcomes. And this chain reaction is quite valuable. If we just kind of start at the beginning about working on the compassion and getting to know each other. This is also a nice little spin-off of last week's, or on Friday, when we were talking about the cultural intelligence and how we're aware of people's differences and instead looking at how much more common we can be and how compassionate we can be for each other. Let me move over to the top right circle. I'll start on the inside again, which is focusing more again on the business side of it, but also on the outer circle with the champagne colored circles. Again, the responsible management. So leaders' emotional intelligence tends to shape the well-being and climate of the team, but this also builds emotional resilience for more pro-social action. And we'll talk about that a bunch in the next couple minutes here, about how it's not just reacting, but it's also about wanting more from the system, the organizations that you work in, and how emotional intelligence can help you with that. It also helps to predict success in intercultural global contexts, very much, again, spinning off of last week on Friday. We are allowed to, this allows us to enable more creativity, morality, and judgment for the SDGs. And then there's also this correlation with transformational leadership. So the more that we understand and are aware of each other, not only our self-awareness, but each other and moving towards more responsible decision making. This fosters intercultural competence and human flourishing. And let me move on to the next slide, where we're going to start getting into a series of questions. But the critical question is, it's not just a challenge to manage these emotions within broken systems. I think many of us are here to challenge those systems and make them better. So it's not just about managing them, but it's about to feel deeply enough to imagine new ones. We won't get too much into possibility thinking today, but it is a really exciting field about how we can imagine the worlds that we want to exist, especially in times of uncertainty where things are being broken and reimagined. So when we look at these, there's a few ways to think about this. Are we developing EI? So if we look to the right here, we see a little image or iconography about a thermometer. Are we developing EI that helps students optimize or extraction, or is this emotional intelligence that enables them to regenerate, to come up with more sustainable ideas, and to come up with new ideas and kind of reimagine the world? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was pointing to the right. What I meant to say is on the bottom, the left circle. So forgive my reference there. Um, is EI for individual success or is it actually for collective flourishing? So again, this isn't necessarily about being more productive or about dominating conversations, but it's about working together better in teams and having collective flourishing. And then lastly, is EI for us to adapt or is it actually for us to participate in the transformation of the systems and the teams that we work on? Okay, now let's get to that other bit to the top right. Oh, if we can go back again. Thank you, Maria. This slide matters because Prime is it calls for the transforming of business systems. And again, if we have more emotional intelligence, it should allow us to do that transformation. The SDGs need leaders who navigate uncertainty. We've been seeing a lot of articles, op-eds, and publications around uncertainty is the new norm. Saw the big announcement from the International Monetary Fund, and I've seen a bunch of other articles from prominent organizations talking about uncertainty. You can imagine the emotions that come with that. We all kind of are navigating that on a day-to-day basis. And then lastly, the poly crisis or the many crises from climate change to the political winds that are shifting and a variety of other ones, the markets and such, this demands a collective capacity for change. So our ability to do that as teams and with each other, not just on individual movements. Okay, so now that's one of our approach. Now let's move a little further into Castle, which is one of the more prominent frameworks for emotional intelligence. So Castle gives us tools and a shared vocabulary for emotion. And so it doesn't necessarily have all the answers, but it's had a significant impact on how we talk about emotional intelligence, moving from many times what we call a soft skill, and now it's becoming more of a prominent skill in our ability to work on teams. So we have a bit of a progression from left to right, kind of starting in the middle, like Lemise alluded to in the beginning, to say breathwork is a really powerful tool for us to become more self-aware. So we're going to go navigate this metaphor of the weather, just like the temperature check that I did on the last slide. That this self-awareness is what kind of weather do you have inside you right now? So it's kind of becoming aware of your body. Feelings can lead to emotions, and those emotions can lead to a lot of behaviors. It doesn't necessarily mean that every feeling needs to lead to the same emotion. That's a part of the self-awareness. This self-management is how do you respond when this weather changes? Also, something that Lemmy said earlier when she asked us to think of a prior emotion to see how that changed our body. A really great way, a soft way for us to manage our feelings and emotions. Social awareness. Are you able to sense others' weather changes when people react to you? So it's becoming more compassionate and sensitive to other people. The more we are sensitive to ourselves, the more skilled we are at seeing each other's. These relation skills. How do we use this emotional awareness with our collaboration and listening and communicating with each other? Another thing that Lemise alluded to during our practice. And then ultimately, how does all of this help to navigate the responsible decision making where our choices affect not only our own personal weather, but the climate ahead with our team, but also walking into rooms or organizations or even eras of time. Okay, thank you so much. One other thing I wanted to say real quick is that Castle is uh, f- founded on a bunch of research. We're going to talk about it in a little moment here on the next slide, but it is one of the more prominent frameworks, and we'll talk about IDG again that Lemise mentioned in just a moment. But let's move on to the next slide, please, Maria, where we start to look at whose norms, and these are the kind of the three big questions here. So whose norms are intelligent? So while we gave you Castle, we're not here to say it's not good. It's a very great way to start with the language, but we also think that we want you and your students to be aware of how to be critical about these frameworks. So Castle was developed in weird contexts. If you're not familiar, that's weird stands for weird, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. So it comes with some biases, in which we privilege Western individualist values as universal standards. And we'll talk about a little bit of nuance in there. And then we'll also reflect some specific cultural assumptions about what's an appropriate emotional expression. You can often see that you probably interacted. We actually talked about this last week, that sometimes when you interact with people from different cultures, and a kind of aggressive feedback could be taken as, uh, people maybe feel threatened by that, but in other cultures, that's just a way of being honest. So you can imagine that some of these emotional reactions can be stirred by these differences as well. So we want you to challenge those. And then if you add the kind of gender complexity of the language around emotional intelligence has been predominantly spoken about in a kind of feminine or soft way. That is, it comes with its own set of biases, which are can be very much problematic. But just again, let me just say that many times these frameworks can pathologize cultural differences as a deficit. So we want you to be aware of that is not how we want to think about this. So let's move on. Another question is, are we building capacity for individual organizations or systemic transformation? Okay, so this is where we start to get into, we risk these teaching survival in broken systems rather than thriving. So is this about optimizing for many years? And I think it was Andreas Schleicher at OECD said we're training humans to become second-rate machines. There's been a shift back as AI has taken over some of the productivity tasks from us, that maybe it is we go back to becoming first-class humans, which is a beautiful notion. When we think about how we risk teaching survival, there's many times burnout can happen when because of the emotions and the stress and the uncertainty that I alluded to a bit ago. Self-management can help you with addressing that. And it's not just about fixing conditions, it's about actually working on yourself. Discrimination, how do you help your students deal with discrimination in a way that is about being resilient and not just changing the power dynamics? Okay. So this is something that you can allow them to start to thrive rather than trying to avoid some of these scenarios. And then toxic culture. Um, are we trying to transform the organizational norms, or are we just trying to regulate? And many times we just want to work on the individual so that we can take care of ourselves, but also that allows us then to move into a more systemic transformation. All of this is to say, if we work on ourselves first, we do run the risk that training students to adapt to the problematic systems will limit their ability to transform them. So it's one thing to adapt to them, but also to think about how we can change them. Now, let's go on to the next one, a third question about what's missing. This brings us to what's missing from the dominant frameworks. Emotional intelligence must scale from the self to the system to the planet, and systemic meaning that we look at our emotions as how they're shaped by these conditions and the realities of our lives. Collective is when we start to look at how do we have solidarity. You see some of these schools around the world are starting to teach more of these concepts about being part of a bigger community. And how do we organize collectively rather than just having these individual competencies, and many times to see who can be the most self-aware or who can be the most social aware. It's actually about how do we link together in those opportunities. And then planetary. So what are the stakeholder and ecological consciousnesses that can happen here? Not just about human relationships, but about how we're part of a bigger community of. And then ultimately, something that we talked about last week as well, moving from ethnocentrism to this more of a cultural pluralism, where we have multiple valid ways of being emotionally intelligent. So this is, I think, a really beautiful take home here for us to not just kind of have an answer from Castle, but that there's many ways for us to engage with each other. So this allows us to look at the many ways that students can practice this as well. Okay, so we'll move on to getting close to the end here of this talk. So if we go to the next slide, what do we mean by an alternative? Okay, so this is, we want to be careful. We want to move from again, the individual competencies to more of a capacities in relation to each other. So this allows us to have these transformations. So when we talk about going from self-awareness, like the roadmap we showed earlier, it's one thing to be aware of your own feelings, but aware of how you fit into the broader system. So you are in a situated location. You understand that you are embedded in power systems. You understand that there's privilege that you bring into a room, or that there's other people bring, or let's focus on yourself, sorry. You bring privilege into the room, but also that there's organizational structures around you. This self-management encourages us to respond ethically with others, organize for change, and also to channel those emotions productively. Again, I think going back to the practice that Lemise was sharing earlier is a helpful way to channel those emotions productively. Social awareness, there's solidarity with all the affected by the business, including the ecosystems and the future generations. So again, who is this, who makes up this social system for you? And then the skills. So how do you redistribute power? How do you build movements? How do you practice mutual care for each other? And then ultimately, when we take care of each other in that way, we can start to make more responsible decisions. So we have envision and enacting regenerative alternatives. Now, if you look at these little teardrops coming from this cloud, we have conversations around being compliant, about empathy, managing people, looking forward, and controlling yourself. I know some of those seem to be difficult, but that's where we have these kind of inner practices that allow us to and enable us to do so. Yeah. So here we go. And again, we use Castle as a foundation, and then so we think, oh, let's use Castle as a foundation, but add a little bit of consciousness here. So we want to challenge the individualization, so that's not just about everybody lifting themselves up by the bootstraps, or being tough, being really strong, and being see how well they can do this emotional intelligence. But it's about, are you helping the students to adapt or transform the systems? Okay. And then are these students fit to, do they feel like they are fitting in and they are able to change those systems? How do we honor cultural diversity? And whose emotions am I centering? Are they mine? Are we working on the students? Are we honoring the diverse ways that they have emotions? We legitimize these productive emotions. Does this make sense? Do we make space for righteousness, righteous anger and grief? Does it label such emotions as unprofessional? So they do come into the room, and if we don't make space for them, they come in a lot of maladaptive ways. Build collective capacity. Am I building these skills for solidarity? Are these ultimately for us to work together, or are we doing this such a way that we're competing against each other again? Or does this sort of for success for our collective flourishing? And then ultimately, how does this work with our emotional intelligence? Adding that consciousness, how does it address power? Does it reveal how power shapes our experience? Now, ultimately, we wanted to give you one example, and like many of the theories or frameworks, you all may have other ideas about theories on frameworks and emotional intelligence. We started with Castle, just like any good textbook, where we only have so much time to give you an overview. But we do have a link to another the literature review that we did, a pretty exhaustive one. And then we wanted to talk about the IDGs as well. So let's go to this last one. So in order for us to make systemic change, we should start from inner growth, which again, I think Lemise was alluding to. Here's these skills, these emotional skills, a lot of different skills here that we think are really nice and synergistic with the SDGs. So if they're about healing the planets and society's ecosystems, the IDGs are about healing our inner climate so that sustainable action becomes possible. I really appreciate you wading through that with us. Again, here is the full literature review, which we'll share a link to in the chat as well. Gives you a nice little flyby, but let's just take a moment to look at that and keep it in on your phone or on your laptop for later. Thank you. Keep the tools and expand your awareness. And now we'll move on to, like we did last week. Here is a QR code again for an SJT, a situational judgment task development. We've taken this course and this webinar and webinar last week to allow you all to and reflect on what we just talked about with emotional intelligence and start to identify and name and look at how you would react to different emotional intelligence scenarios. So when you go to this Qualtrics page here, we're going to ask you to generate some authentic experiences and then your responses to them. So we're just going to take a few moments to do that. So thank you very much. And let us know if you have questions and give us a thumbs up when you're done with this. Thank you. Great. Thanks for the thumbs up, everyone. We'll give you another minute or two, but yeah, those thumbs are helpful. Let us know if you need more time as well in the chat. That's always helpful. So what's kind of nice is as you participate in this development of these SJTs, not only do we want you to become more aware of how you can integrate assessments or tracking of skills development yourself, but also as you offer these aren't ones that just go into the ether. We'll be feeding these back to you all um, over the course of the next few weeks as we put them into a database and allow you to access them. So they could be useful for you all. We'll be sharing those. And then later on, we're also going to do another activity where we generate some more EI activities, and we'll share those as well. So we'll do that one real time. Let us know, is there anybody here who needs more time? Otherwise, we're going to move forward in the next phase here. Fantastic. Okay, so let me hand it over to Maria as her feed freezes. Oh, I saw a hand go up. Yeah, no problem. We'll wait for Maria's smile to become live again. Here she goes. Hi, Maria. I think we're losing your audio. No, we cannot hear you yet.
No, now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, great. All right, so let me stop sharing for a second. All right, because now it's time for us to do our individual emotional intelligence check. So I'm just going to share a board link that I hope all of you can access. And yes, Ian, this is a very similar SJT development exercise, but now focused on the emotional intelligence aspect. Thanks for noticing. I've shared the link of the board on the chat. Please let me know if you have any trouble accessing it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a quick pulse on our EI across these 5 castle dimensions: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. We'll each self-place on each of these categories, and then we will look at this collective map that we've created today of the emotional intelligence in the room. If you cannot open the board, please let us know in the chat and we can add your dots or your reflections on the board. So, for example, I'm going to bring you all, okay, I see plenty of people are joining now. I'm going to bring you all to the first one, which is the self-awareness. If you are seeing a swarm of cursors and you find it annoying, I'm going to invite you to click on the number where you have everyone joining. So right here where it's a 42 or 43. And here there's a toggle that you can see here, like there's this swarm of cursors. So if you want that to go away, you can just toggle it off by clicking here. And now you won't be able to see it. Okay, so what I want us all to do is to go through these different statements around self-awareness and place yourselves where you see, yeah, I see already some people doing that. If we can do it closer to the weather grid, we're playing with a weather metaphor here, so we can all place it next to these, depending on where you see yourself and how you are doing currently in terms of self-awareness. I see, yes, some people have already started to add your dots. I'm going to bring everyone to me again. And what you have to do is basically click on one of these dots and drag it wherever you see yourself in terms of self-awareness. Again, if you can do it closer to the weather image, that will give us a sense of how we're doing. Great. And we're going to do that for the 5 dimensions. I see Karen over here. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. All right. Steph, Russia. Amazing.
Yeah, and
All right.
it's kind of important to notice that we're not always the same level of self-awareness throughout the day. So
Not at
just
all.
map where you are today at this moment.
Exactly. Yeah. No, definitely. And if you have done self-awareness, you can move on down here to self-management. And same exercise. Check, how are we today? How's the weather today in terms of self-management? Okay, I see some of you already starting to place yourselves. Fantastic. The color of the dot doesn't really matter. What matters is that we can see how are we populating each of the competencies. And that we do the exercise of checking ourselves in these different competencies. It all starts with, yeah, like checking on ourselves before we even try to help our students develop all these competencies. All right, I think we are ready to move on to social awareness. I see some of you had already started. Let me bring everyone to me again. Great. And help me do a temperature check on social awareness. Fantastic, thank you. All right, we're high in social awareness. Fantastic. Thank you all. Shall we move on to relationship skills? Let's see. If you cannot find a dot, you can drag them right here where it says individual EI check, and you can just drag them. They're kind of infinite. You can drag as many as you want.
Well, again, like what we do often, Winded Vertigo does in our workshops is this is a way to evaluate or monitor these skills. You can borrow these tools. These are things that we share afterwards. You can use these in your classrooms to not only to get a check to see if an activity that you design for them is helpful and maybe kind of changes their temperature, but also for them to become aware of what are the kind of behaviors or the indicators that show what developing relationship skills looks like, or for to see where they are. So these measures aren't just to evaluate, they're actually for them to have time to reflect and learn with you, so that we're being transparent.
Thank you. Yes. I think we are ready to move to our last one, which is responsible decision making. I think many of you have already gone through it. Let me bring you once more to me. Thank you, Garrett, for sharing the screen. Right. Fantastic. See, getting populated. Great. Okay, we'll have a couple of more seconds before we look at our big picture. All right. Just gonna here. Great. All right. So if we can zoom out. Oh, Gary, yeah. Victoria, if you cannot, if you want us to place your dots for you, we're happy to. Thank you for zooming out. So I would like to ask everyone, what do you see? What does this tell us about our strengths, our opportunities? You can write your reflections in the chat. I would love to hear one or two voices too. I think you've heard a lot of the three of us, and I think it's now time that we hear from you. So yeah, what do you see in terms of our weather map of our castle competencies? Seems all over the map. So there's, yeah, we have some with like a pretty even distribution. That's right. Alexander, one problem with these frameworks is that very sunny decision in one professional aspect of life can lead to clouds and rain in the other parts of professional life. It's not linear, definitely. It's very complex, it's very nuanced. And like Garrett also shared, we do have to be critical about it and look at it from a systems perspective, from a holistic perspective. Definitely. What else can you see? I would love to read or hear one more voice, at least, on your reflections. Are there any that feel or seem stronger, ones we could build from, others where we have more opportunities? Self-management seems more difficult. Yeah. Social awareness seems to be the topic with less dispersion, but in any case, there's a lot of dispersion in all topics. Yeah. The mode seems to be always on the upper part, definitely. It overlaps and our position will change from one situation to another, definitely. And sometimes makes that difficult to position yourself. Like Garrett said, sometimes it depends on the day, on where you're currently placed. Social awareness seems stronger. Self-management seems slightly lower on average. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but you're right. The rest is pretty evenly distributed. What we want to be and where we are, it's not always the same. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much. We all suffer from the better than average effect.
Well,
Yeah.
it's also these are opportunities when you have these kind of check-ins, these pulses to find out. You can question those, be like, are you sure about this? Do you really feel and challenge, okay, how do you stay calm and confident when challenges arise? Can you give me examples of that so that we can see what self-awareness looks like? Or we see the self-management isn't as top heavy as the other ones, so maybe that's an opportunity for you as a faculty member to introduce an activity around self-management. So this is where the monitoring and evaluation can really kind of play with your curriculum or your pedagogy.
And there's some really great discussions of where you place yourself versus where you think others would position you, understanding versus regulating
Yeah.
emotions, reflection helping with self-awareness and self-management, or observing throughout a day the levels of self-awareness and self-management and how they change and how they impact your interactions. Yeah, asking for examples, definitely. Thank you so much, everyone, for like even like for starters being vulnerable and placing yourself in these temperature checks that we have created based on the castle competencies. So now we're going to move on to the next part, which is coming together to design for playful EI. Let me quickly share my screen. Let's see if it works because my computer has been playing tricks on me today. Let's see. Please let me know if you can see it. Okay,
There we go.
so now we're at the part of our webinars. If you have been here before, you knew it was coming, where we were sending you to breakout groups to create something, do some stuff, share with each other, reflect together. So we're going to ask you in groups, and if you can help me, Gary, to start setting up the breakout rooms while I explain. So you're going to have to choose one castle competency. It could be more. I would recommend starting with one but you can mix and match. And we have created what we're calling the EI Prime bot to generate playful activity ideas for you to use with your students. I'll show it to you in a moment. So first choose a castle competency, then prompt the bot to give you some playful ideas on how to develop that competency in your students. It's going to ask you for some context around group size, challenges in the group, that you should feed it so it's the response is more refined, the group size, etc. And we want you to first choose the best idea, and then discuss what's playful about it, how and refine it. How does it make sense in your teaching context? What needs adaptations? Because we know that bots can not only hallucinate, but they can sometimes not give us the most relevant response or the one that resonates most in our context. Once you have chosen your top idea by doing back and forth chat with the bot, we're going to ask you to fill out this form. Can you see it? Can you confirm that you're looking at the Notion screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay,
It's
give me
the
1
individual
second.
EI check slide for now.
Oh, so I've been talking. See, let me stop sharing. Today's been the weirdest for my computer. I'm so sorry. I mean, we know it
It's all
happens.
good. Yeah, we've all been there.
We've all been there. Okay, so share again, but why is it that you're just looking at the individual AI check and not? Oh, because I was in another screen. Great. So this is what I thought I was showing you. Again, we'll choose a chat castle competency, use the EI Prime bot. Here's the QR codes. We'll share the links in the chat as well. We want you to play it with it, prompt it, go back and forward, refine your activities to make sense to you. And once you have it, and once you love your idea, we want you to fill it out in the following Notion form. Looks like this. So you'll have to fill out an activity name, do like a short headline, a duration. The format, is it in person, is it online? It can be done in any way. Is it for large groups, small groups, all types of groups? The castle competency, your objective, step-by-step instructions, and then a cover image. If you want to add your names, because we will be doing a repository and we will show it to you after this, please go ahead and add your name. The bot is designed to give you all these. So like you don't have to keep asking for it. So when you start asking for activities, it will give you the name, the headline, the duration, format, competencies, objective, instructions, and all. So it's basically just about what's more important is that you discuss and that you refine until you're satisfied with the output you're getting from the EI Prime bot. I will share, let me just quickly live model an example of how it works with you. So you open it and it starts, I can say logged out. It asks right away around like, could you tell me a bit about the course you're teaching, subject, level, class size? And we can say finance, 25 students. I want to develop self-management for an online class. And it will start generating activity. So for example, here, it's a market mindset simulator, a reflective role play that lets students track and regulate their emotional portfolio during simulated financial stress. And it will give you the instructions, the format, the objective, but we want you to go through them and refine them. And again, make it make sense to you. And then, and then put the information on the Notion form. So I think I've talked too much now. Are we ready? Again, you will need 2 links, the Notion form and the chat. You will be sent out to breakout rooms and you all together have to decide on a playful way to support students' EI competencies.
Great. I think I have the
Great.
instructions correctly in the chat. And then Maria, do you want what, 5 people per room,
Yeah,
something?
5 sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. And okay, we're going to send you over. And we have what, 20 minutes?
20 minutes, yes. And we will come
15 or
back,
20
share a
minutes.
bit, and
Okay.
yeah, we will give you next steps then.
All right. See ya. Okay, so seems like we have a handful of people who are still in the plenary.
I'm just going to pause recording.
Yes, thank
Here we go.
And welcome back, everyone. We hope you had a great time creating your playful EI activities. We are looking at the great ideas that you have come up with. I'm just going to open one or two. This one is called the Ethical Time Machine, where students are role playing future selves, looking back on today's decisions from the vantage point of long-term consequences. Wow. They can choose a future role, CEO, community leader, parent, whistleblower, etc. And they do their time travel reflections and storytelling round. And they can create artifacts around it. Fantastic. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Let's see the ethical logistics challenge. This is a real-time simulation where team balances profit, ethics, and sustainability in global supply chain decisions. Cool. They have role cards, they have decision rounds, and then they create a responsible sourcing manifesto. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And you can keep using the link if you, some of them would be busy hours. Some of them are shorter. So we have 20-minute activities. We have, yeah, week-long activities, and you can ask it to make it shorter or simpler, of course. Thank you, Anna. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for engaging. And again, you can keep using the link. We have it like it is curated for you to get ideas based on prime pedagogy, latest evidence and emotional intelligence, and like play-based practices. So we hope you find it useful.
Yeah, it's great. We'll probably take some liberties by just tidying things up and adding images
Yeah.
for each of those. And then we do this with a variety of activities. We also have what we call the Vertigo Vault, which has 20 some activities for like startups and or for icebreakers and warm up activities and such. So that's also available to you all as well. If you don't mind, we're gonna kind of move towards wrapping up and having some reflections. So we have a post-test link in the both in the chat and on the screen here. So if you want to scan that, it should just take a couple minutes. It'll be a fun little follow-up to see where you're at. And again, in 2 weeks, we will share a brief on this particular webinar with some insights on the pre-test, post-test, but also sharing some of these other resources again at that Prime Pedagogy website. So we'll just give you another minute or two before we reflect on these forms as my children wake up for the day. And give us a thumbs up when you're done with it, SJT. That'd be great. Or ask us if you have any questions. Now, as you wrap up that SJT, we would love it if you could, again, take a look at that link to the forms. Um, we have a link to the Notion form so you can see the gallery view. Share it in just a Now, if you can give us a thumbs up when you're done with that post test, and those of you who are done, if you can look at that gallery view of the activities, that'd be great. And then we'd love a little reflection here. So if you could just take, we have a few more minutes here. If you could tell us any reflections you have on looking at the other activities, see what you learned. I know Maria gave a walkthrough, but go and take a look-see. That'd be great. And then Maria, if you don't mind taking us down to the link back to Prime Pedagogy slide, we can debrief again here too. So just to kind of reflect on our learning, as Dewey always said, one of the most important parts of learning something is to reflect on what happened. We also wanted to show you that we uh, do what we preach. We walk the talk by what we integrated our prime design principles. Thank you, Maria and Lamis, for creating these experiences. So we made these things personal by asking you to be authentic, especially when you offered your SJT activities, relationship centered. We thought many times these breakout rooms, but also the kind of vibe that we try to create here is about that. We hope that the modularity, meaning that people come from wherever they are, was very much a topic today and last week as well. Making this experiential for you all to work with the bot, but with each other, and then insightful. Hopefully, there was some joy and maybe a few breakthroughs for you. Perhaps it's having a bot to generate activities, but also that you have a community here to play with. Why we're doing it, we're developing these skills. We tried to really evoke critical thinking today, but also the emotional intelligence piece from CASTLE to the IDGs and aligning that with our efforts towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And then lastly, you can see over the course of the last 90 minutes, we asked you to connect with each other and our ideas. We then asked you to explore, and now we hope that you're able to transform those ideas. We have this gallery of activities for you to take back. But yeah, please add any comments or reflections on what you thought from today and or the gallery view of these activities. And we'll wrap it up in the next couple minutes. Let us know if you have any questions.
And yeah, of course. Dana, thanks for sharing the reflection. And now this is the last webinar that is part of the certificate of practice. Now, if you want to go a step further, you're going to move into ADAPT, which is the certificate, certificate of participation. This is what we're ending now. So from all these webinars, Strengthening Emotional Intelligence is our last one. We've gone through all of this. You've probably gone to the intro session. Yes, practice is next, Alexander. Thank you. So in practice, you're going to have to adapt and implement, adapt your pedagogical strategies to your course. But based on what you have learned from these webinars, we will have an informational session in November where we will invite you to share what you have created, but also give you some insights on how to achieve the certificate. And then if you want to go even a step further, we have the Certificate of Excellence, which we will be discussing and sharing in December. And that is about applying, implementing, and that's where the measures from, for example, the SJTs that you have helped us develop will come very handy. Yeah, I don't know, Garrett, if you want to add anything about the certificates of practice and excellence.
Yeah, really great point. I also linked them to the Prime Pedagogy website, so you'll be able to see where we post all of our assets for you all to share. Yes, we are moving very much. There's been two sessions, one in the spring and one in the fall, where we had two sets of three different courses that are topical. And then next month, I believe it's November 20, we will be doing an adapt session where you can bring your activities. We will give you more information, but this is where we give you an opportunity to bring your work and we primify it. Essentially, we will help you apply the prime design principles so that you can adapt your own materials. And that will help you move towards getting the certificate of practice. And then in December 11, we'll have another activity where we go through some assessments and skills monitoring. And I think my kids are screaming in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. But anyways, thank you very much for your time today. Let's see, I'll answer some questions in the syllabi. Otherwise, you can message Prime and we will respond quickly. Thank you all very much for joining today and look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Also, on behalf of Winded Vertigo, thank you, Maria and Lamis. My name is Garrett. We really appreciate your time and your passion in leading in today. Thank you, everyone.